So one of the questions that I often get on my channel is what can you be doing if you want to study architecture, but you're not there yet? Maybe you're in middle school or high school, or maybe you're about to enter college. And so you want to know what you should be doing now so you could be a step ahead before you actually start. And so I'm going to give you 7 things that you should be working on. And this is going to be a lot of information, so don't feel like you have to do it all. But if you at least focus on a few of these things and practice, then you're going to be a few steps ahead, and that's perfectly fine. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to learn about history. And so I've made this playlist, and right now it only has a few videos, but I've made this playlist for you guys, and you can access it just by going to my channel. So when you're at my channel, if you just click on the button that says playlists, you'll get a bunch of these, and you can just head over to the one that's called Arc History, and it'll start playing for you. And on the side, I have all the videos that I've been adding. If you guys know of any history documentaries that you guys have enjoyed in the past that deal with architecture, send those over to me if you'd like. And I will actually add them to my playlist so we can help out some students over here or some people that are interested in architecture. But the idea is that you want to watch and learn as much as possible, because in school you're going to be learning a lot of architectural history, and it's not 1 or 2 classes. It's something that's constantly ongoing. You're always focusing and always referencing the history. It's really important. History tends to be a subject that's kind of boring sometimes to people. It's really infamous for being boring. And I think that sometimes it can get boring. I think some of these documentaries I personally enjoy, but sometimes I feel like most people might look at them and might be really bored because they're way too formal in the way that they speak about the history. And I'm not saying that's a negative thing. I'm just saying that it pushes away people who are starting to become interested in the field of architecture. So just try to watch as much of these as you can, and check back because I will be adding new ones to it. And the ones that don't really interest you, just push them aside till a later time, because maybe as you get more involved in the career, you'll start to change your ideas on these documentaries that you find boring now. I also have a few books that you could look into, and the first one is called The Short Story of Architecture, and it's a really great book because it's just that. It's a short story on the history of architecture. And what it does is that it's basically divided into 4 chapters, and they're not really chapters, but 4 categories, I would say. And those 4 categories are the different styles, the different buildings, the different elements, and the different materials. And that's how this book is divided into those 4 categories. And so what I love about it is that it only gives you about 1 or 2 pages per building type or per era, whatever you are looking at into the book. It only gives you a short summary. So it's not a good book that you should get if you really want to dive into a specific type of architecture. But if you are looking to better understand the history of architecture, because it's so complex and sometimes it's very complicated to see what came before or what was inspired by what, this book is actually pretty good at doing that. And so I really recommend this book for that. It's awesome that it's very small, so it fits in your bag. You could always carry it with you, and you can just open up 1 single page or 2 every single day and learn something new. Okay, it also goes into later. In certain types of buildings, it'll tell you who the architect was, and it'll give you a little fact about them. So very nice images, very great book. I recommend this one. The second book I recommend is this one called The History of Architecture. And this one is not a pocket-sized book. It's actually more along the lines of a textbook. And the reason I recommend this one is because it's also a short summary of the different types of architecture or architectural styles that have been, but it gives you a little bit more information than the other book that I showed you. So this is another great book to have. I really recommend this one. Again, it's not going to be a very detailed explanation of the history of architecture, because for that you would need individual textbooks for every major period to get a better idea of the history behind those periods. But this is a good book to have that makes learning about history easy or easier, and it makes it fun, and it's also a great reference book to have. The next thing you're going to be doing in school a lot is designing, and so you're going to want to have an idea of what design is and how design works in architecture and how to design. And you learn design 3 main ways. You learn by watching, you learn by learning about it, and you learn by doing it. And that's basically the learning and the doing part you're going to do a lot of at school. But the watching you can do now. You can watch how other architects work. You can watch how other architects design and what goes into their designs and what they're thinking when they're designing. And so I've also made a playlist that you guys can follow the same way that you would follow the history one. And that one deals with only design. So I've gone ahead and added a few of my favorite videos, especially by Bjarke Ingels, because he's an architect that is really famous for doing crazy, for lack of a better word, but crazy designs. And I do enjoy them, and they're really fun designs, and it's fun to hear him talk because he's so passionate about his architecture. And so I really recommend that you follow this playlist here and you try to watch some of them. And again, if you find something boring, that's fine. Set it aside. Some of these videos might be boring, but try to make note of what interests you the most. And if something catches your attention in anything that's said or shown in these videos, make note of it. It's good to keep a sketchbook with you at all times and make note of what interests you, because as you move along, you will be able to decide what exactly of architecture starts to interest you, and then you can dive deeper into those specific areas or those specific sections of architecture. And for this part, I'm not going to recommend any book. I do have a few books that I could recommend, but I think those might confuse you more than they will help you at this stage, especially if you're just getting into architecture. So right now I'm trying to have you learn in a way that's fun and exciting and it's easy, because if I give you too many books or too many other things, then I fear that you might get a little bored from the career, and that's not what I want. This is a super fun career, but it tends to feel boring sometimes depending how you learn about it. And again, if you guys have any other documentaries that are not here or any other videos that you think belong in the design playlist, then just send them over to me. You could contact me on any of my social media and I'll be happy to add them. So something else that you guys could be doing in the meantime while you're waiting for school to start or before you're even thinking about college is sketching. Sketching is something that's really easy, really simple to do. And what I mean by that is all you need is your sketchbook. So I'm going to link the sketchbooks that I use. These are Moleskine sketchbooks. I'm going to put that link in the description. But beside that, you can just use paper. You can use an iPad. I sometimes use my own iPad to sketch. I actually have been doing that often. But a common question is, well, what do I sketch? Or what if I'm not good at sketching? Well, that's the whole point. If you're not good at sketching, well, this is the time to practice. And what do you sketch? I recommend you don't do perspectives. And perspectives are basically three-dimensional objects. So take this microphone, for example. I wouldn't recommend that you try to sketch it the way that it looks, because what's going to happen is if you're not good at sketching naturally, you're going to make something that doesn't look like this, and it's going to really discourage you. And I think that's the reason why a lot of people don't like to sketch, is because they think they're bad at it. And what you got to be doing is not focus on something so complicated, because it will overwhelm you. But what I recommend is that you sketch household items that look interesting like this, but only sketch a small part of it. So if I was to sketch this, I would probably sketch this hook right here, or maybe this connection here. And I wouldn't do it in 3D. I would do it in 2 dimensions. You could sketch anything, and I'll show you some of my sketches real quick. But fill up your sketchbook. Fill it up as much as you can. These are some of my sketches from back when I was in school. This is an old sketchbook. And you'll notice that I like to sketch a lot in 2 dimensions. So feel free to do that. It's the easiest way. Sometimes I do sketch in 3 dimensions, but like I said, I don't recommend that. Do a lot of 2-dimensional sketching. And also to help you with your sketches, of course, I've created a playlist for you. So these are techniques for sketching, and some of them are going to be in 3 dimensions. Don't start with those. You can watch them and get inspired by them and learn the techniques that they're using. So by techniques, I mean, notice that they're not really focused on making their lines perfectly straight. They're not focused on making perfect sketches. These sketches are very rough sketches, but the techniques they use, the way that they make the shadows, the way that they add color, that's what makes these sketches so good. So watch a few of these, especially the ones that I put about how to draw people and how to draw trees, because architects don't spend a lot of time drawing trees or people. It's important to show both, but architects are not going to sit there and spend all their time focusing on the leaves of a tree or on every single detail of a person. So I've also included some videos that show you how to draw those too, and take your time going through these videos and practicing yourself. And if you're not good at something or you don't find joy sketching one of these things, it's okay. Set those aside for a later time, just like I recommend for the other things. Once you feel comfortable sketching by hand, you could try sketching some floor plans. And notice this is a sketch that I made, but notice that the lines are not straight. Some lines overlap. You can see some lines that I left here, and I could have erased them, but I leave them because I actually like that. I like how rough these drawings look. You might not like these, and that's okay. If you don't like them, aim to do a better job than I have here. But notice that it could be simple. You know, you just show these lines that represent the walls thicker, and then the door swings, they have to be lighter, and things that are overhead, they show up as a dashed line. And these are just some ideas, some techniques, but learn how to draw floor plans and practice. If this is the first time that you see a floor plan yourself, I encourage you to look up videos on how to make your own floor plan and try to apply those to making your own floor plan. And do it by hand. Try to do this for your own house. Maybe you can make up a design and start to draw some of these elements. Find out how to draw windows, how to draw doors, how to draw curtain walls. What is a curtain wall? These are things that you want to be learning, because when you first start architecture, you're going to have to learn how to read a floor plan really quickly. It's one of the first things that you do, because you're going to have to start making your own floor plans. And so I really encourage you to start looking at what a floor plan is. This is a very basic one, but it's a hand sketch. And you're going to be using hand sketch floor plans very often, because when you start designing in school, you're not going to have time to make professional plans just when you started the design. You're going to have to make a lot of quick plans to decide what's going to work for your project. And so you want to practice doing this. There's a lot of videos on YouTube that cover how to make a floor plan. I might make my own in the future, but it won't be at least a few weeks before I do that. And so I encourage you to go online and find some videos of people showing you. There's plenty, trust me, I've seen them. There's plenty of videos of people making their own floor plans. So look into them and practice making your own floor plans by hand, not on any software. Practice first by hand. Once you feel that you've got a good grip on those, we can talk about software, which is my next point. Before I get to my next point, though, I want to point out that you should be learning different techniques on how to draw materials. So you'll notice that I left this all white, but look into how you would represent graphically how to make wooden floors, how to make concrete floors, you know, how to make these walls. They don't have to be dark lines. They could actually be two separate lines with a white gap in the middle. So start to look into these techniques and start trying to feel comfortable with all the different techniques of drawing materials and drawing floor plans, and also drawing different type of trees. So if you have been watching some of those videos that I mentioned in the last one about sketching trees, you're also going to want to learn how to sketch trees not only in elevation, which is standing up, but in plan, which is looking down, like these right here. The next thing you want to do is learn some programs, and learning programs is probably one of the most complicated things on this list. So you have to be very, very patient when you're learning these programs. There's 3 programs that you want to learn, and that's SketchUp, AutoCAD, and Rhino. You don't have to learn all 3, but if you learn all 3, you're going to be way ahead. And so this image that I have here is an image of a competition that I was in with a friend from school. And I used Rhino for this model here. And so what Rhino is, it's a program that allows you to create 3-dimensional objects like this. The reason I say to learn SketchUp first is because SketchUp is really easy. It's easier than Rhino to learn, and it works great. It's super simple to make a model if you need to do something very quickly. So I recommend you learning that one first. It could take you a few days, maybe even a week at most, to learn that program. Not master it, but to learn it enough to do basic shapes like this. The next program you want to learn is AutoCAD, and this is a PDF that I made from one of the projects I was working on. And you'll notice that AutoCAD allows you to create really professional looking plans. It's what's used in firms. Firms are moving to other programs, but definitely you can still find a lot of work to do on AutoCAD in firms. So it's a really good program to know. It's going to help you a lot in school. It's very complicated to learn, very, very difficult to learn, but I'm sure if you dedicate enough time to it, you can learn it in maybe a month. If this is your first time using any program, you're going to have to work hard. It took me a couple months to learn it, but I took a class at the university, or at the college rather. And so it was really, really difficult. But if you practice every day, you'll get it. And learning this program before school is not mandatory. But if you can get this program down, it's going to help you so much. Because just by learning this program, even if you decide not to use it, just knowing this program is going to open up your mind to be able to understand other programs much quicker. So if you actually learn AutoCAD, then when you start working in Rhino, it's just going to be so much easier to work on it, because Rhino and AutoCAD work similarly. So if you learn how to use AutoCAD using the commands, because there's 2 ways. You can either type up what you want to do in AutoCAD. For example, if you want to draw a line, you type in line, enter, and then you start drawing the line. Well, those commands are very similar in Rhino. So if you learn AutoCAD by learning the commands of what you want to do, then learning Rhino is going to be so much easier. So those are the 3 programs you want to look into. Start with SketchUp, and then if you can, learn AutoCAD, and then after that move on to Rhino. Even though Rhino and SketchUp are very similar, I think that Rhino can help you produce more professional looking projects, and the commands that Rhino has, in my opinion, are way more powerful than SketchUp. Some people like SketchUp, and a lot of people used it in school all the way up to the final. But I always vouch for Rhino. I think it's more of a professional program than SketchUp is. One other thing you want to be doing is learning about photography. Photography is actually super underrated in architecture, and what I mean by that is that nobody talks enough about how important photography is in architecture. And it's so important because when you want to document buildings, knowing how to take pictures is just going to help you so much more. Number 2, when you start working on your portfolios and you start taking pictures of your models and other things that you have made, knowing how to take pictures, knowing about photography and composition is just going to make it so much better. And then finally, when you start doing renderings, this is a rendering, this is not a real image, this is a rendering I created for one of my projects. Once you start doing things like this, you're going to want to know where you should put the camera, what the camera should focus on, how to use a camera, what aperture is, what focal point is, all this stuff, because if you don't know how to do this stuff, then you're going to have to dedicate more time while you're learning to render to do this stuff. And so learning how to use a camera is going to help you again to take pictures of buildings, for pictures of your portfolio, or for pictures that go into your portfolio, and finally to actually create renderings, which is something that you're going to be doing a lot of. You're going to want to have an eye in photography to be able to do this kind of stuff successfully. The last thing that I'll mention here, and you're probably going to think this is a joke or that this has nothing to do with architecture, but it does 100%, and that is saving your money. This is something that you can do starting right now. If you're working, or even if you're not working, finding a way on how to make money on the side and saving it is super important. Because by doing that, you're going to have a little nest egg that you can use when you start your classes, because not only are you going to be paying for your school, you're also going to be paying for access to programs, you're going to be paying for materials to build your models, and you're going to be paying for laptops. Laptops are expensive. And so this is something that I used to hear when I was in high school, and I knew I was going to study architecture, but I always wondered, how much money do I really need? So since I always wondered that, I never actually saved money because I always felt that it wouldn't be enough. And I feel like a good number of money that you should have saved, a good rule of thumb would be $1,000. And obviously this is not the minimum or the maximum, it's just a general rule of thumb. If you can save more money than that, that's good. You don't need to use the full $1,000, and you don't have to use more, you don't have to use less. It's up to you how much you use and where you get your resources from. But I recommend having $1,000 as a little safety net, because for example, a laptop, it costs about $1,000, a good one, a really good one to be able to use for school toward the end of your education is going to cost you about $1,000 even more. So having $1,000 saved up is going to be great. Also, when you first start architecture and you're building all these models, those models get really expensive, and all the different things you're going to have to be buying are going to get really expensive. So if you just start saving up, aiming to at least have 1,000, at least. If you can do more, please do more, because you're going to need it. And if you don't use it, great. You have all that money saved up there to buy a car, or I don't know, pay for school or something. And so that's going to be my last point, and that's save as much money as you can before you start school. And so I know that there's a lot to learn. I know that I've gone over a lot of different things, but I just want you to keep in mind that the important thing here is not to be overwhelmed with all you need to learn or all you need to do, but just pick a few things that you want to focus on. Maybe this week you're going to try learning about photography, and next week you're going to try doing some sketches. Actually, you should be sketching every single day. But the point is that every day you want to be doing something. Every day you want to be doing something productive to learn, and do as much as you can. And don't worry about being perfect or being great at everything. Just aim to learn something new every single day. And so that's the end of my video. I really do hope you guys enjoyed it. If you are someone who's watching this who actually already graduated, maybe you're an architect, or maybe you have some experience with some of the things that I talked about, leave a comment down below so you can help out other people who are thinking about becoming students, so that we can help guide them a little bit better, or at least better than we were guided before we get into the career. So I'll see you guys down in the comments.